Right, what's happening, people, and welcome back to the Joey Knight podcast. Welcome to my guest today, Matisse.
Pleasure.
Matisse, thanks for joining me, mate. How's it all going?
Big up, bro. Very much a pleasure. Good to be on. And yeah, looking forward to talking because we have to have a debrief. We have to have a big discussion on this team.
Well, that's exactly what we're here to do in this video. But before we get into it, we're obviously very, very eager to know your lot's thoughts. So make sure you're interacting, get in the comments, let us know your thoughts on what's going on at Chelsea at the moment, who's to potentially blame, which brings me on nicely. Who is to blame for what is going on at Chelsea at the moment? Is it the players? Is it the manager? Is it the owner? Or is it a bit of everything? We want to talk about that in this video. So starting off, Matisse, we've seen us obviously have quite an underwhelming start to the season. I was looking at the fixture list and barring Liverpool, and I get that every team poises their threats. You know, I get that Aston Villa are a really good team. A lot of the sides we've played so far have their strengths and have the capability to go and beat top teams, but I would have fancied us as a favourite, in more or less all the matches that we've played so far.
Yeah.
However, it just hasn't really panned out that way. So what were your sort of initial expectations going into this season?
My expectation was Champions League football. I think when you play one game a week, that is meant to serve as an advantage in terms of you've got more time to rest, more time to recover, more time to train, to work on that system, to really try and be perfectionists in that situation, because obviously other teams are playing in Europe and they've got to travel and they've got to think about 2 games in 1 week and prepare for opposition analysis and all these things. We don't have to do that. We've got a whole week to just focus on Premier League. So I expected to get back into the Champions League based on that. And also because we spent so much money, and I know a lot of that and we'll get to this, a lot of that has been for Strasbourg project or for, a lot of under 21, under 23. But even when most of the team and the bulk of the team is fit, which is a massive issue, that's a good enough side to be with the advantage of no Europe, where the other teams will pick up injuries and have more chance of having issues. That's where we should be taking advantage. So Champions League was something that we need to get back into. With the money we've spent financially, we have to get back into that for revenue alone, let alone for achievements.
Would you say Champions League, in your opinion, now is a write-off for this season?
I'm not writing it off. Because I do believe that it's a long season, and that Champions League run in, we've always been in it. And it's actually always like nobody wants that position. Like people drop points for fun at the end of the season. Everybody seems to be dropping clangers. Nobody wants to be in the Champions League. They're just, it's just a merry-go-round. And by the end of it, even for us, when we finished in the final day, losing to Aston Villa, beating Wolves, Mason Mount free kick, so many times where I've been like, we don't really deserve to be in the Champions League. Like, we haven't played well towards the back end of the season. We've dropped loads of points, but luckily others have as well, whether that's fatigue or what. But it's not something where people run away and they can escape you. If you go on a bit of a run for even 5-6 games, you can get back into that conversation. I remember even when Potter was sacked, I think we were like 8 points off. And if we had gone on a different trajectory and we had really, we could have made it, potentially. I think the title race, listen, that's where teams will leave you behind if you're slacking. But I think Champions League, until I see that we're a massive points difference, and we're maybe halfway through the season. But right now, it's too early to say.
The way I look at it is this: 3 places already taken. We know that Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool, in whatever order, which I'd put Man City at the top of, are going to be there or thereabouts, and they're going to occupy those 3 spots. Now,
we got that 5th place because of the coefficient.
Well, that's it, and that's not actually a guarantee, but actually, if you look at it, I think it's only 2 out of the last 13 seasons that if this was already a rule that was implemented, England wouldn't have qualified for that 5th spot. So, by all purposes, we're going to get that 5th spot, right? Or we, not Chelsea. I mean, the English Premier League is going to get that 5th spot. Now, when I look at it, I think that the lure you can always have with Chelsea, and again, we're always searching for optimism, and that's the position we're in, and we've got to roll with it. But the lure that you could say is when you look at the teams that are going for that 5th spot, right? Spurs, they're a standout, and obviously the thing that we'd level at them is the fact that, like us, they haven't got midweek football. They're already out of one of the cups. Maybe by the time this goes out, we'll be out of a cup as well, but touch wood, hopefully not. But they're already out of one of the cups, and obviously FA Cup, you wouldn't make them at all favourites by any stretch of the imagination. They are going to have, for the most part, a week between their games, and they're going to be facing teams like Liverpool, like Brighton, like Newcastle, like Aston Villa, who are all in and around that running. who obviously will be playing, Thursday, Sunday sometimes, a way more congested fixture schedule, and that will benefit Spurs. So you'd probably put them as one of the favourites there. Obviously, Brighton playing brilliant football, maybe a little bit disrespectful to teams like West Ham, who I haven't mentioned, who obviously have got European football as well, but have been playing really well. But all these teams I'm speaking about, right? When I think about, okay, we know what we're getting from them, and stability and knowing what a team are good at are really, really big strengths. But when I think about what team, if the fuse paper's lit, could just go on a run, you've got to put Chelsea up there. Now, at the minute, we're not seeing anything good from Chelsea. So anyone a bit more pessimistic, and that's even people within our fan base, and I'd completely say they've got the right to be pessimistic, anyone would look at that and think, well, why do you think that could happen? But when I look at the personnel we've got, when I look at the little bits of intricate play that we play every now and again, and we're doing it for 5% of the match, but if we could up it for 10%, 15, 20%, and start getting the numbers up and really hit some form, then you think we could be a dangerous prospect. Because at the minute, what we've not seen is this team play with confidence. And I do truly believe that if a vital turning point, which could be tomorrow night's match, which obviously, will have happened by the time this has gone out, could be the Monday Night Football against Fulham, it could be any of these games coming up, that the fuse paper could be lit and we could go from there. We could go on a run. Mudryk could get confidence. Jackson could start banging goals and stop getting yellow carded at every fucking opportunity. Things could happen and we could really, really go on a run, and then we could be in it. But at the minute, we'd be naive to even back us, and I don't think we'd be being honest with ourselves if we were to back us. So because of the position we're in, we have to look, and it could be early, it could be reactive, but I don't think it is, because context is everything, and we look at the way that last season's gone as well. Because of the position we're in, the first person that we will point our fingers to as football fans, and it's the way we're conditioned, is the manager. So what do you think about Mauricio Pochettino's performance so far as Chelsea manager?
I think, obviously, all the underlying statistics will show, we're doing really well for this. Shots, box entries, I don't know. Big chances created, big chances missed, unfortunately, as well. And all of the data, which is what's been coming out in reports, would say, listen, Chelsea shouldn't be where they are for expected points. But at the end of the day, football's not just about data. Football's about emotion. Football's about application and output as well. It's not just about dominating and being the better team and deserving more but not getting more. You have to understand why you're not getting more, and that's down to the final third and the defensive third, individual errors, both sides not making the key decisions. So sometimes I do sympathise with Pochettino, for instance, in a game against Aston Villa where Sterling and Jackson are literally borderline, they could hold hands and run, skip together to the goalkeeper, and Sterling refuses to pass to him and it's a tap-in. That's just idiotic behaviour. That's just insane. That's nothing that a manager can quantify for. He's got you into that position. That chance has been created. Aston Villa and Bournemouth, the last two games, high lines, loads of space in behind to take advantage with quick players, and Sterling's and etc. haven't been able to do that. Jackson's big chances have been missed. But then with Pochettino, what annoys me is it's time to play players in their natural position. Yep. Enzo and Gallagher. Why is Gallagher on the football, almost in the deeper positions, trying to find runners, trying to dictate, when Enzo is higher up the pitch waiting to receive passes when it should be the other way around? We know Gallagher at Palace was a bit of a box crasher. He was getting a few goals. He was counter-pressing. He can be close to Jackson, make runs off Jackson if he drops deep. Why is Enzo Fernandez not the hub of the team? Why is he not the epicenter of the team? Whenever you play Enzo Fernandez in those half spaces, he drifts. And then when he drifts, everything goes in his direction because the team naturally know he's the best player on the ball. But what that means is that when he's not in the centre, the other side is completely disjointed from the team. I looked at the left-hand side, especially with Colwell playing left-back as well, and you look at the destinies, you look at the Andrew Robertsons at other teams, they're supporting their left winger. They're giving them overlaps. They're giving them underlaps. Mudryk would get help with a left-back out there. He doesn't get that with Colwell. So there's a few positions where it's like, just do the basics. Just play players in their natural position. Play somebody that is capable of playing as a 10 in the 10. Play Enzo in the midfield next to Caicedo. That's the whole point of signing Caicedo and Lavia, obviously, when he comes back from injury. Add that balance to the midfield so Enzo can play there.
Is that a major concern? Because exactly what you're saying there, I would echo, and it seems so glaringly obvious. And, we're YouTubers, mate. We're not football managers. And the whole fan base, everyone in capacity at Stamford Bridge, everyone watching, would echo what you're saying there. So is that not a major concern, that it seems so obvious? yet the manager is very reluctant to change things? Is that an element of stubbornness that's coming in there that's saying, listen, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. And obviously the club's had a lot of instability. We played so many different formations last season, so many different lineups. We rotated more than any team in the Premier League. Yeah. And I think that sort of the proof was in the pudding come the end of the season when you saw where we had finished in the league. So is there method behind the madness here from Pochettino's side?
I always try to understand where the manager's coming from, because there obviously is a logical explanation for why they're doing what they're doing. For instance, Cole playing left back. Maybe the team lacks height. I think when I saw average height for teams in the Premier League, we were like second from bottom. Obviously, there's always set pieces against West Ham. There's long throws against Nottingham Forest. There's a lot of things in the Premier League that make this the most physical league in the world, that make it combative. You need to be winning your aerial duels. And Chelsea, with taking that extra centre-back away, would maybe be more susceptible to giving away chances and losing those battles. And then with the Gallagher-Enzo situation against Liverpool, Gallagher was the deepest and Enzo was a little bit further forward. And we saw Gallagher mopping up, winning the ball back, interceptions, tackles, and Enzo was getting his foot on the ball and playing those final passes. And what I struggle with Gallagher, and this is on the manager for, I guess, wanting to keep him and not maybe bringing in a Mohamed Kudus, or, he didn't want João Felix back, etc., is that when Gallagher's in those half spaces, which is what I'm basically saying I would switch, but really when we speak, we're talking about really putting Cole Palmer there. I'd probably bench Conor Gallagher personally. I don't think he's good enough to start for Chelsea, let alone wear the armband. I think him wearing the armband is unfortunately a clear sign of where we're at as a football club. He's not a leader. He is someone that needs to be led. He's a player that needs to improve drastically. And I think even though he's had a decent start to the season, him in the 10, when we're up against those low blocks, especially when the spaces are quite tight, when he receives the ball, I can't trust his touch. I can't trust him to dribble or pass the opponent. I can't trust his final pass to be weighted correctly in between those tight little corridors where, the block is narrow and there's not much space, and I need that. Enzo's a better passer. So I get that side of things where when you're talking about that final ball, but at the same time, Enzo for me is the player that you got to prioritize, and he has to play to his strengths because he's one of the best players in the team, and he's the one we've put a lot of investment into. So for me, I always try to understand it, but at the same time, we're not winning games. It's not working. So now you've got to be basic now and put players in a natural position and give Mudryk support and give Enzo the opportunity to receive the ball and to play those long passes. When you look at his statistics at Benfica, it was top for progressive passes, top for long balls attempted and successful. The guy is almost a young Fabregas in the way he plays, but in the same time, Fabregas obviously was a better player. He played in the 10 and he could be a second striker at Arsenal. But if you look at the latter part of his career, next to Matic, he was the conductor. That's what Enzo is at a young age. He's a conductor. He's not a Gerrard. He's not a Bellingham. He's not a Lampard. He's not a young Fabregas at Arsenal who's going to crash the box and score goals. Whenever Enzo, unfortunately, has been in goal-scoring positions, he's fluffed his lines. Yeah. He's not that killer instinct. He's not that killer in the box. He's not that guy.
One thing I would definitely say is more established managers in the past have been able to sort of understand, hold their hands up, maybe where things have gone wrong and be able to change stuff systematically, Very prime example, and I'm sure it's been used countless times, but we look at Antonio Conte. He came in. Yep. He had been playing a back three in Italy. He came to Chelsea. We were playing a back four at the time. He was playing a back four. We got beat by Arsenal. Didn't have the best starts of the season. He changes things to a back three. We go on an unbelievable run. We win the Premier League. The proof was in the pudding there. However, to counter that, while he's in my head, Antonio Conte, when we say about playing players out of position, no one saw Victor Moses as a wing-back before Antonio Conte did it. So I do understand that there's sort of elements and there's two sides to every story. And
of course,
ultimately, I think that when you play players out of position, the magnifying glass on it is only going to be shined on it if you don't win. No one really said anything when Luke Shaw was played as a centre-back last season for Man United because they were winning, No one said anything, as I say, when Victor Moses was played out of position. There's a lot of sort of cases here that we could speak about where it's sort of gone right for the team. And people haven't said, oh, that's a bit of a strange one. So even
John Stones in midfield.
John Stones, in the Champions League final, absolutely pulling strings. Even in pre-season when Maatsen, we had sort of seen him as a left-back and he was playing centre attacking mid and linking up with Jackson. No one was saying too much then because we were winning. Yeah. But I think that no one's above criticism. And I do think that we do have a few genuine concerns about Pochettino and about his tactics he's played so far. Yeah. However, saying that is by no means me saying Pochettino's not the man for the job now, and you know, we've got to panic at this moment in time, because I do think things will come good with him, and I think that he does need time. However, my opinion on it is the problems run way deeper than Pochettino. And I think you could have anyone barring a Klopp or a Pep at the club, and they're not going to do that much of a better job than Pochettino's doing, because the problem for me lies with the ownership. And I'm gonna sort of just say before I speak my mind on the ownership, this, what you're about to hear, is me not saying I need Boehly out of the club. This, what you're about to hear, is me not being ungrateful for the money that's been spent. Is not me, you know, saying that I don't think that we're ever going to get anywhere with this ownership. Yeah. But as I say, no one's above criticism, okay? And we've got to level some sort of criticism at it. Todd Boehly came into the club. He was hell-bent on having a complete upheaval when it came to staff, when it came to the manager, and even when it came to players. I'm just going to look at my computer screen here because there's too much for me to even remember the exact positions that he's got rid of. But he came in, he sacks medical staff, groundskeepers, commercial directors, director of communications. We've seen 2 managers sacked under his reign and 2 depart by mutual consent. Even little ones like Bruno, who took charge for the match against Liverpool, that one match in between Graham Potter being sacked and Lampard being appointed. Now, all of us sort of thought that, okay, when Pochettino comes, he'll be let go of. But no, due to the lack of stability in the club, we were told that Bruno would stay on. He's now left through the back door. No official communication from the club, anything like that. As has Claude Makelele in his role. Makelele's left. We've heard nothing about it. And that, for me, smells a bit fishy. It sort of says to me, hold on, are things going on here that people don't want to voice their opinion on it, but because they also don't want to lie about it, we're just sort of keeping it hush-hush here, okay? Obviously, you look at the player turnaround. I understand very much so that there were players like Ziyech, Pulisic, Mount, who didn't want to be at the club. And I believe that when there's players that don't want to be at the club and they're not rowing in the same direction as the rest of the team, or as you want the rest of the team too, we've got to get him out the door. That is completely fine, and I understand that. But when you look at the fact that Todd Boehly let go of 25 players on a permanent basis and brought 27 in, whether or not there was players that didn't want to be there, whether or not there was players that some of us might disagree and some of us might agree on, say like an N'Golo Kante, who, yes, absolutely brilliant game changer, who we could use with right now if he's fit and available. But how often is he fit and available? Exactly. And then you look at his wages and you look at you're trying to bring the wage structure down, which I'll actually give credit. Todd Boehly has done quite well doing so. You look at that and you think, okay, certain players needed to go and it was maybe the right time. But that sort of upheaval surely didn't need to be done to the extent that it was done. And surely all of that creates for massive, massive instability within the club.
I think for me, when I look back on the players that we got rid of, there was only very few that I was like, I wish we would have kept. Someone like a Lewis Hall, who went to Newcastle, saw great amount of potential in him last season when he played at the left wing back role. Some of the massive games he played as well, against Man City, he played Manchester United, and I thought he put in really good cameo performances and looked like a really gifted young 18-year-old who we could develop and kick on. So that was a regret. But a lot of the players I do agree needed to leave. The Ziyech's, the Aubameyangs, the Lukaku's, Kante, for me, very injury prone. We just could not keep him fit. But now we're having struggles with injuries anyway across the board. You know, we have a record amount of injuries, not just this season, but it's in previous seasons as well. Us and Liverpool have always struggled with that statistically. So there's a lot of deeper issues here. I think one of my main concerns that I want to add to this is we're trying to do too much too soon. And I even extend that with the multi-club model. Before you have to go outside and to try and fix the world, you have to make sure your house is in order. And Chelsea's not in order. You just come into the club. The first window, there's the context of Rudiger's contract not extended. Christensen's contract not extended. So you've got to replace 2 senior centre-backs, which Tuchel wants. Lukaku, that situation is toxic. You've got to sort that too. Timo Werner didn't work out. And Kai Havertz and Ziyech and all these players are still yet to kick into gear under previous ownership, under previous managers. So it's not like as if you're coming into a situation that is absolutely perfect. It's not a Manchester City have just won the title and now you're kicking on to the next level, and it's not that. But for me, when you start signing young Brazilian players and you're trying to sign players for Strasbourg and you're trying to purchase sport in Lisbon, I understand the multi-club model and the vision. Do I necessarily like it? From a business aspect, I get it. From a club development player perspective, I get it. From a footballing standpoint where I don't want to see football owned by the same ownership across the board. I don't want to see City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham all owning 9-10 clubs. I think then it doesn't become as pure in terms of the club and its actual. I get Strasbourg fans, for instance, having sort of massive concerns and protests almost against being owned by another ownership who own multiple clubs, because at the end of the day, that club is meant to be unique to itself. It's not meant to be an olive branch. It's not meant to be a feeder club or an olive branch off of us. Obviously, it helps us, but if we were in their position and it was the other way around, we wouldn't want to be, an extension of someone else.
Knowing that we could harness a really good young player, and then eventually
he goes back.
Just going to go there. And he probably won't even go there, for a price that we're going to be able to invest and then get loads of money anyway, because it is a feeder club for that reason. You mentioned Man City there, Obviously, we know that Man City have acquired, and had the City group. It didn't happen in 2008.
Exactly.
Didn't happen in 2008. So, like you say, is he biting off a bit more than he can chew here? I look at the transfer policy itself. Brilliant. Okay, we're bringing in young players and whatnot, but we look at Brighton, a club that, have done really well over the past few seasons. They had an Adam Lallana there. Yeah. They put a James Milner in, There is nothing wrong with bringing in a few above 25-year-olds. Maddison wasn't even considered because he was above the age of 25, Say, for example, Ike Gundogan, he went to Barcelona, Champions League football. They're always going to be able to have a bit of a lure over Chelsea at the minute, being that we're not in European competition. But why is a player like him not considered? Why is a player like maybe a Harry Kane, I get it would have been a lot of money, but not considered over the likes of players who are very, very young, but also it's going to take them ages to bed in. And what I don't think is anticipated for here is every year that you're not in European competition, that is going to really, really hit you in the pocket. And then we're going to have to do the one thing that we don't want to do.
Keep players leaving as well.
Academy assets, Look.
Real Madrid, Reece James,
I'm calling it now, mate. And it's awful to say this, but we're probably going to see Reece James sold under this Boehly ownership. And that is a horrible prospect for me as a Chelsea fan. He's club captain. He's Chelsea through and through. He's my favourite player in the team. And I think that the ceiling for Reece James, if he can overcome these injury problems, are so important. Yeah. But if we don't qualify for the Champions League next season and we don't get it this season, then we're going to have to start looking at more of these players being sold off. We bought the likes of a Cucurella in, but sold the likes of a Lewis Hall for the, look, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but who would have done a better job for us? Yeah. Not only for the here and now, which I believe Lewis Hall's a better player than Cucurella, but also for understanding the club, for coming through, for knowing the culture, Even the appointment of Mauricio Pochettino. Why was Pochettino not brought in when Lampard was brought in? Pochettino should have been brought in then. The season was a write-off then anyway. I know you said about the fact we could have made Champions League football. You would probably put a Mauricio Pochettino with more of a chance than getting it than a Frank Lampard, as much as I love him. Yeah. Why was he not brought in then? Why was he given a month and a half to get to know our players and then be expected to hit the ground running, rather than 4 months or something like that to be able to work with the squad a little bit, to be able to assess who he wanted in, who he wanted out? Also, I understand that it's not always the best thing for the manager to have complete say over who comes in and out. I look at Manchester United at the moment and I think that Ten Hag's talent ID isn't really great. And the signings that we know that he definitely has the line majority of the say over who comes in and out. Otherwise, it's an awful coincidence that he's bringing in a lot of players if it's above his head that he's worked with before. Yeah. But also, whether or not me and you believe that Conor Gallagher needs to be in this starting lineup or not, there's a massive contradiction, an elephant in the room that no one wants to address. We were trying desperately to sell Conor Gallagher over the summer, and then the season starts, and what happens?
He's wearing the armband.
Conor Gallagher is Mauricio Pochettino's man, which says to anyone that wants to open their eyes and look at it that the board and the manager are not aligned here. Yeah. And it's only a matter of time before that rears a sort of really ugly situation. So here's how I sort of stand on it, right? I think that Todd Boehly's transfer policy, when he first came in, was not very good at all, okay? The likes of Koulibaly, the sort of players that we were bringing in.
Ronaldo he wanted.
Yeah, Ronaldo he wanted. They just did not fit, okay? And I think that he levelled it up ever so slightly, yeah? But when he improved it on steroids, basically. It went mental. So it was like, okay, the profile was a little bit better, but you went completely mental with it, okay? So you need to harness that in. But what I will give Todd Boehly credit for is, some of the players we got out the door, we got good money for. I could have never imagined a world where we were going to get 20-odd million for Koulibaly. There was a lot of players that I thought we'd take significant hits on, and we didn't. And he's done well there. And I think that, a few of the things, I was initially giving him a little bit credit for finding these loopholes. And actually, as time goes on, I think, you're not going to be the first person that ever acknowledged there was a loophole there. And there's probably reasons why other people didn't use these loopholes. So I don't want to draw a conclusion here, but he needs to improve in his line of thinking when it comes to how this club's being run.
But now it seems like, based on the exclusive interviews from Lawrence Stewart, from the likes of Paul and Stanley, what the club released with Pochettino's exclusive interview a couple of weeks ago, it feels like now that situation where Roman kind of handed the reins over to Mourinho, and now Bowie may have handed the reins over to Lawrence Stewart and to Paul and Stanley. And my thing is with this kind of operation so far is it's been extremism. Like you said, it's either high wages, 300k for Koulibaly, Sterling, big wages for Aubameyang, short-termism in that side, and then you sack the manager after working with him once in a Champions League game against, I think it was Dinamo Zagreb. And then next thing you know, the next policy is everybody has to be under 23, and it's extremism again. Wages bang straight down to the floor. There's no balance. There's no, okay, we're going to have a young player here like Badia Shill. Really good scouting's been done there. But now we're going to get a Maddison. And then we're going to, a bit of balance, a little bit of normality almost. It's like it's one way or it's the other. And look at Tuchel and Potter, two different extremes again. It's for me, there just needs to be a bit of stability. There needs to be less staff going in and out through this revolving door constantly, because that's unsettling. Less players in and out. When we approached this summer, I said I want 3-4 players max. Just get the spine. Goalkeeper, DM, striker, and potentially maybe an attacking midfielder. It had Nkunku coming in regardless, so, depending on that. But don't do too much. And then we go and we get our Washingtons and our Angelos. And I'm not saying these guys aren't going to be great, Andre Santos's, but it's all too much movement again too soon, and there will always be more young players. This infatuation that we have to sign every single young player we see. I've seen this player called Nusa, Norwegian, I think. People are talking about him now. There will be another one in 3 years. And another one. And if you keep signing young players and you stockpile them, they will start to deteriorate as talents purely because there's too much. The timeline is too similar. Yeah. What worked perfectly with Tammy Abraham and Giroud is that they were different age profiles. Aspilicueta and Reece James, different age profiles. David Silva and Foden, different age profiles. There's so many examples of a leader, an experience, done a decade. I can show you the ropes. I'm about to decline. A Silva to a Colwell situation, and now you take the mantle. You take the baton. What we've done is, in so many positions, they're all inconsistent. They're all unreliable because they're all still developing. So it's not really their fault that they're not performing to the Chelsea level, because they're not Chelsea level, and we've potentially overpaid for some of them, etc. But we don't have that balance between youth and experience to take them out the firing line or put them in certain moments and kind of rotate and negotiate their position instead of just full throttle. You must perform. And he
doesn't realise, this is the thing.
It's the Premier League.
He don't realise, right? You're buying all these players. You see them all as assets. There's no, it's not happened by chance. There's a reason why you're only buying players under the age of 25. And believe you me, it is not tactical. It's not because you think that players under the age of 25 are the only ones that propel you to a title. You're doing it for sell-on value. Now, what you don't realise, mate, is you can only give out so many minutes. You are going to depreciate their value anyway. You know what I mean? And then you depreciate their value, and you're not going to get the sort of fees from you want, and the clubs aren't going to pay them the same sort of wages that we're paying them. So all of a sudden, their players will go, oh, do you know what? I'm all right here, actually. I'll sit on the bench here on 80 grand a week or whatever it is. And it's just, it's a lack of thinking.
It's just doing too much too soon. I think he's doing it because Enzo Fernandez, so some of them are profit players, but Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo are clearly not. You're not making a profit on those. That's clear ambition to want to be the best and want to pick the best talents, the Camavingas we've missed out on, the Tchouaménis, the Jude Bellinghams, that revolution of midfield for Real Madrid. But also, you've got to take your time. You've got to do things in order. You've got to be able to sometimes sit back and say, do you know what? We're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then we're going to leave it. And we're going to see how those pieces of the puzzle work. And then after that, we can come back later. Like I said, there's always going to be young talents. But if you stockpile all of the young talents now, like you said, you can't go and get more. You can't just keep lumping on young talent after young talent. And this multi-club model that we're trying to put in place, we've almost brought in enough players for about 3-4 clubs in a multi-club model. we don't have 3-4 clubs. We've only got one.
Yeah.
We literally just got Strasbourg. So as you acquire more clubs, maybe say one every 2 years, then you bring in more young players to go to that said club. But we've tried to bring in all those players now to the point we have no room left on our loan. And then next thing you know, Andre Santos is at Nottingham Forest and they're bringing in midfielders on deadline day and he's not in the squad.
Now,
maybe that will change, but I was really impressed with Andre Santos in pre-season. I was impressed with Angelo in pre-season. He's now thankfully playing for Strasbourg and playing regular under Patrick Vieira. Maybe there's some control there. There's no control at Nottingham Forest. There was no control for Ampadu at Sheffield United. There was no control for Gilmore at Norwich. You have to have a clear integration strategy as well. It's not just about recruitment. Brighton got the recruitment right, then they got the integration right, and therefore they got the end product. And we're not trying to be Brighton. When they get to that end product, I better not see them sold. I better not see Angelo have a great season at Strasbourg, then we integrate him into our team, and then when he gets to his 60, 70 million value, he's sold. No, he stays here, and hopefully he wins trophies. But that we will determine, I guess, in said time.
Unfortunately, in my opinion, that is very much what we will see. We will see a lot of players get to that position and then we'll see them sold on because, as I say...
If we're not making Champions League, we will have to sell them because of the lack of revenue.
Exactly. So, Pochettino, ultimately, look, we can't change our ownership. It's not us saying we want to, but as I say, you know, if there's criticism there to be leveled, we've got to explore what is going on at the club right now. But the only man that can really change things at the moment is Mauricio Pochettino. Now, would you agree with me that the only thing he can really do is sort of out of his hands? It's just time. I truly believe that nothing... Look, I understand. There's plenty of things that we'd like to see. We don't want to see Colwell left back. We don't want to see Gallagher being the man that we're turning to every single match and our vocal point in the team.
Yeah.
However... You know, time is the only thing that will truly do it. People could look at it and they could go, well, Unai Emery, he didn't need time at Aston Villa. Completely different, mate. Completely different. He came into a situation where all of those players knew each other. There was a lot of senior players in the squad, you know. And then we look at the sort of leading managers in our league, okay? Pep Guardiola. He didn't win the league in his first season. Yeah. He finished third with no silverware. You know, we look at Jurgen Klopp. Finished 8th in his first season, I think it was. Again, or it might have been 7th, but again, no silverware. Arteta, he comes in, wins a bit of silverware, but then has back-to-back 8th place finishes, eventually gets a Champions League run going and is perceived to have bottled it a little bit. So it doesn't happen for these managers in their first season that came into clubs with a lot more stability than Chelsea at the moment. So I do think that although we've touched on Mauricio Pochettino there, we've got to acknowledge that, I can't speak for yourself, but at least in my opinion, he's the man for the job here. He's the man for the job.
I wanted him badly at Chelsea. And at the moment, a lot of the Chelsea fan bases are getting onto me. They're saying, how could you have brought this fraud into my club? But as much as, obviously, we've spoken about the things that I'd like him to change in his own tactical setup or his system setup, his substitutions being more proactive, the amount of times I said, come on a watch-along, let's get a half-time substitution in here. And we wait until the second half, we concede, then we start reacting. At the same time as all that, we have to take into context that this many injuries that we have is not sustainable. If we continue to keep having this amount of injuries and we keep picking them up, which I don't know what the heart of the issue is. I'm not a doctor. I don't know if it's the medical team or it's the recovery.
Well, Boehly actually got rid of the medical team. And our injury crisis dates back a lot longer than Todd Boehly knew who Chelsea Football Club even were. You know what I mean? Like, we've had these bad injuries. I remember the Brentford game. Sorry to interrupt you, but I remember the Brentford game, We just about won it. Mendy had a man-of-the-match performance away at Brentford under Tuchel, and that was the match that I think both Reece and Chilwell went down injured. And obviously, we'd had injury problems before then, but from that game...
Never was the same again.
Never the same again. Never the same again. That was before, as I say, Todd Boehly even knew where Chelsea's ground was.
And
you know what I mean?
If we keep having those injury issues, we're never going to have a stable team that we can say, okay, that's your role, that's your role, that's your role, and have some consistency. We're always going to be chopping and changing. And that's my biggest worry as well. You know, the injuries are ridiculous. So that's another factor. But also, like you said, it's every single summer and every single January so far, which is just the one, there's just been massive change. That can't happen anymore. There needs to be some stability. We need to give people time to settle, and we need to give the manager time to implement what he's trying to implement. However, Premier League is very unforgiving, and the fixture list that we have after the international break in October is damning. It's Arsenal, it's Brentford, it's City, it's Tottenham, it's United, it's everyone other than Liverpool, basically, Newcastle, Brighton. So we are about to probably go through we already are in a rough patch. It's going to get rougher. I think it's going to get potentially worse. And will we get through that and see the other side with Pochettino still at the helm? That will be down to the board. But I think for me, if the board were to sack him, that is an indictment again on the board, more so than Pochettino, because I know Pochettino is a good manager, even though he's making errors that I can't sometimes understand. I can try and think logistically why he's doing it, but I don't agree with it. The board, that would now be consecutive seasons where we have, that's more sackings than Roman.
Yeah.
Roman Abramovich never sacked this many managers in this period of time. Never would have had this many players moving in and out, and this many managers moving in and out. That would be their own thing there.
And also, it's not to say that, because there's an option on the market, you should go there. But if we sack Poch, who are we bringing in? Honestly, like, who do you think is going to do a better job?
But who wants to come here? Naga's been rejected.
This is what
Christopher
I'm saying.
Vell left. I think there was too many cooks in the kitchen.
And I mentioned the fact that it took Pochettino a long time to come in, and I sort of levelled that criticism at Todd Boehly and the people that are running it. How do we know that wasn't Pochettino going, mate, do you know what? I want to be really sure before I come into this club, because at the moment, it does look scattergun. You do look hot-headed, and it doesn't look like something where I'm going to be given the time, the luxury to be able to implement my ideas. So maybe I'll just sit back and see how you're running things and then make my decision. And that could be a case there. But
it's Abramovich on steroids without the success.
Exactly.
And without the top players to work with.
You summed it up there. Listen, ultimately, it's just a discussion. It's not something, we're not fixing Chelsea here. It's not something that we can give any definitive answer apart from giving our opinions. But what I'm more interested to know is your lot's opinions. Who's to blame for Chelsea's start to this season and what's going on at the minute? Or are we being reactionary? I don't think we are, but there's obviously that possibility. I'm very, very interested to know what your lot's thoughts are in the comment section. So please let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I will be reading all of your comments. I'll try and get back to as many of you as I possibly can. And again, thank Matisse by going over to his channel. It's linked in the description. Subscribe to him. You're getting daily content from his channel. Really, really good stuff that I can vouch for myself. So make sure you're over there so that you can see all of his content. If you're not already, please do me a massive favor. I'm working really, really hard to bang these sort of videos out for you. I'm hopefully uploading on a daily basis as much as I can, and I need your help in doing so. If you are not already, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I do understand that YouTube recommendations will just bring my videos up if you're watching them a lot, but you don't understand how important it is that you subscribe to the channel and also hit the bell so that you get a notification every time one of my videos goes live, and I will see you all in the next one.